Hey guys, welcome to Paracord Planet. Today I want to show you how to make an outdoor macrame plant hanger using paracord. There's a couple reasons you might want to use paracord instead of like the typical cotton rope. One is that it's extremely durable and it's going to hold up to the elements outside. And the other is that paracord comes in all sorts of colors and patterns like this. In the description of this video, we'll put a link to our store where we have over 600 colors of paracord. So with that, let's dive in. So for this project, you're going to need about 80 to 100 feet of paracord, depending on your design. I'm using 80 feet here, so that's 8 pieces cut into 10-foot lengths, and that'll give me a finished product that's about 2 feet long, like that one. In addition to that, you'll need some hardware. In this project, we're just using a 2.5-inch steel ring. Any size is going to work, but that's what I'm using. And then for working with paracord, you just need a scissors and a lighter to melt the ends so they don't fray. So to begin, we're just going to take one cord and just find the approximate middle. We're going to be shifting things around a little bit later, so it doesn't matter if it's exact. And then we'll put that fold through our ring, fold it over, and pull the ends through. This is a very basic macrame knot known as the cow hitch or the lark's head. We're going to attach all of our cords that same way, and then we'll go on to the next step. Once all those are attached, we're going to do some really simple math. And we don't want the cow hitch to be in the middle of the cord. We want, since we have a 10-foot strand, we want one side to be 6 feet and the other to be 4 feet. So we're going to match these up in pairs. So we're going to have 4 pairs of 2 hitches each. Let's just deal with one of those to start with, because each of these is going to become one cord in the end, one braided cord. So what we want is the 2 center ones to be 4 feet long. Since those aren't going to be braided, those are just going to be going right through the middle of our knots. And then these 2 outside ones are going to be the braiding strands. So we want those to be a little bit longer because they take a little bit more cord. So shift those around until you have 6 feet, 4 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet. Then move on to the next pair and do the same thing. Once you're done adjusting those lengths, we can start with our first pair. We're going to do a spiral DNA weave. So we're going to take those 2 4-foot strands in the middle, and then the 2 outside strands being our 6-foot ones. Take the right side and bring it across the top. Left side down over that cord, and then lift up your weave, bring it around the back, and pull it up through this loop over here. If you're experienced with paracording or macrame, that's known as a square knot or a cobra knot. But for the spiral, we're just going to do the same side each time. So whereas with the square knot, we would start with this side next. For the spiral, we're just going to start with that right side every time. So we're going to do that for a few inches and catch you with the next step. After that, we'll leave a little bit of space and then do a typical cobra weave or square knot. After a couple inches of that, we'll move back into the spiral. This is just a suggestion. If you want to do it differently, go for it. So before we go into that cobra, we're going to switch our weaving cords and our inner cords like that. So we brought both outside cords to the middle. And then these new outside ones become our new weaving cords. So just like with the spiral, we're going to start with that right side over the top. The left side down and around. And then don't tie that one all the way tight because we want to leave that space there. I'm leaving about a 2-inch space. And then once you have that knot tied, we'll take that left side cord across the top, the right side over that, but then down around the back and up through this loop. Now we can tighten those 2 knots against each other. And then that'll hold tight. We don't want to pull our center strands tight or these ones too tight at this point because, again, that paracord is a little bit slippery. Right side over the top again, left side down and around. So we're switching each time. Left side across the top, right side down and around. So now after our couple square knots, we're not going to switch our cords back around, but we're going to go back into that spiral. So these center cords are going to stay our center cords, and these outer weaving cords are going to stay as our weaving cords. This is kind of a trick that you can do when gauging how much cord you have left. If one set is shorter, you can use those as your center cords, and if one set is longer, you can use them as your weaving cords to kind of even those out. So jumping back into the spiral, we'll do that for another few inches. Now that one of these braids is done, we can go ahead and make 3 more for a total of 4. And then after that, we'll make a little bit of a net to go around our plant. As we're making our next 3, we can kind of use this as our guide and keep our lengths the same. They're not going to be exactly the same, as some of them are going to sit up higher on our ring than the others. So you just want to put them in place before you gauge the lengths. So this one here is going to be a little bit longer than one sitting at the bottom of the ring. So now that we have 4 of those done, we can start on our net at the bottom. And the first step of that is going to look mostly like this step back here, where we just do a couple square knots in a row. And then we're going to be connecting those to the pairs next to them. So first, I'll just take one of my braids here, leave another little space, and do a couple square knots. So we'll go ahead and do that on each set of cords, and then we'll be pairing them up with the ones next to them. Now is when our 2D project is going to turn 3D. So these middle 2 cords are going to form the back side, and these outside cords are going to form the front side of our plant hanger. Oftentimes these projects are made while hanging up. We've done it on a tabletop, but now is when we're going to add our pot in. So laying it out like this, we want them to be spaced out evenly around the whole pot. So we'll start by just linking all these together, and then once we're done, we'll link these 2 sides together to form that front. So taking our 2 middle sets of cords, we want to use those middle 4 cords. So we'll set those other ones aside, and now these weave cords are going to become the center cords of this braid. Like you can see with the yellow one back here, I should have showed you before I took the pot out, but we just did this part. Now we're linking them up to one in the middle, like that. So again, we're just going to be doing these same knots, but in this set of cords. So we'll take that outside cord, make our square knots. And it's always good to tie the first full square knot before tightening any of that down. Otherwise, it's just going to slide around. We'll leave the spacing about like we did up here, maybe a little bit longer, depending on the size of your pot as well. If yours is bigger or smaller than this, you want to make it in a way that that's going to sit in there nice. And then when you tighten that first knot down, you just want to make sure that all of your cords are the same length. Right here, this one's a little bit tighter than the rest, so we want to adjust and make those all similar. We'll finish that up with one more set of square knots. And then we'll move on to our next set. So taking the left 2 cords from this one and the right 2 cords from this one, and do the same thing. So now comes the part where we're going to make it into our 3D plant hanger. So we'll take those outer 2 cords on either side, and they're going to come together to make our last one. So we'll just fold them in like this, and make that last set of square knots. At this point, we want to see if our pot fits. So we'll go ahead and test that out. It's not going to sit in there quite yet, but it'll show us whether it fits. I'm just going to take these in my fist for now, and we'll be whipping those together. And that's looking about right. At this point, you want to tighten down any of those knots that you need to, or adjust the lengths so that it all sits right. So for this step, we're going to be using what's called a common whipping, and we have a video on that topic if you want a closer look at it. But you have a couple options at this point. If you only have 80 feet of paracord, you can go ahead and just take your longest strand and cut it just a couple inches away from where we're going to make our whipping. So about here, you could either cut it or leave it attached and make the whipping with that cord, and we're not going to notice that one cord is missing. I've got a little bit of extra, so I'm going to leave those where they are. Paracord usually comes in 100 feet, so I've got 20 feet left from this project. So I'm just going to take a couple feet. Really, 1.5 feet is probably going to do. So I've got a small portion that I'm going to be wrapping around. Let's take our bundled cord, and in general we want all of our pairs to stay together. It's a little bit impossible to do entirely, but just kind of separate those out before bunching them together, and you're going to get a cleaner look at the end. Bundle all those together and take one end of our cord, and we're going to be folding that over with just a couple inches at the end. Like that. Put that right alongside our bundle and begin wrapping the long end around the entire thing. So where this stripe goes around, we want our next one to land just to the left of that, or just to the top of that. And then tighten that down really nice and tight. That's going to be our holding power for that knot. The tighter we wrap, the better it's going to hold. And just keep on making wraps. You probably want to make at least 5 wraps here. After that's done, we'll take that end and put it through our little loop that's left down here. And then we'll take this end on the other side and pull that tight. Make sure this one is nice and tight first, and then hold that in place by tightening that loop around it. We'll cut off both of those ends to finish it off nice and melt it with a lighter. You don't want to do that with cotton cord, or you'll have a nice fire going. So now we can go ahead and cut our cords even length, or leave them staggered how they are. I'm going to test it out with my pot first, just to make sure everything fits in place. And that's looking how I want it. So I'm going to leave about 6 inches there and cut the ends and melt them as well. So there we go, our macrame plant hanger is all done. While paracord isn't the first rope that people probably think of when making macrame, it's actually a good alternative to cotton rope, especially when making projects that you want to last outdoors. As always, we put links in the description to where you can find the supplies used in this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and we hope to see you around.